Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Siriani.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Siriani, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. In this episode, I'm specifically going to share a process and some ideas for how you can expand learning opportunities to increase employee engagement in your team. Now, if you've listened to my strategies to driving employee engagement, there was episodes 58, 59, and 60. I did talk about learning and a development plan and how important learning is to every employee, and that includes you, but every employee's level of engagement. There's 12 drivers of engagement, and at least 5 of them directly relate to learning. So if you as a leader put more attention on how you're providing learning opportunities for your team, that's going to pay dividends. At the very least, you're going to see an increased engagement, which means your team is going to give you their best effort. They're going to be excited about what they're working on, feel good about working for you and with your colleagues, and hopefully get even better results. Because when you're engaged, you give more of that discretionary effort. You're giving maybe even more than 100%. And people will want to work for you. You're going to be that sought after leader because people know that you're investing in their professional growth. I once worked for a CEO where that was one of his main goals, was that he wanted to be seen as a leader who invested in our employees. It absolutely translates to how well you can attract top talent and recruit into your organization or into your team. It is a really attractive feature because you're competing with a lot of other managers, a lot of other employers. And if you can set yourself apart as somebody who invests in the professional development of your team, it's going to go a long way. Again, you're going to be a sought after leader and a sought after organization. So in this episode, again, I'm going to walk you through several steps that you can take to really make sure that learning is a part of your culture, a part of your operation. And you can do it even without a big budget, and you can do it without a ton of investment of time. Just have it be part of your natural process. So I'm going to walk you through that. Now, before I do, if you're listening for the first time, I'll just take a quick minute to introduce myself. As a leadership success coach, where I focus my time is I help leaders in technology accelerate growth, both for themselves personally and for their organizations, while creating a workplace for their teams to thrive. And my background is I spent my entire career in technology. Worked my way right out of college, up the ranks, starting out as a programmer, managing other programmers, data centers, customer support, you name it. I feel like I've done pretty much almost all the different roles, stayed in tech for many, many years, more than 30 years, up until I became a coach. So my last role as Chief People Officer for a software company, as much as I absolutely loved championing a fantastic company culture and really investing in the professional development of our teams, once I finished that and we did win a Best Place to Work award, I was really drawn to leave my corporate roles behind and become a full-time coach and consultant. So now, as we go through today's topic, I will share some programs that I have created and some things that I have learned both from my tech career and as a coach and consultant that I want to share with you that hopefully will benefit you as you look to expand learning opportunities for your own team. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the first thing that I want to mention is if you go back to my prior podcast episodes, 58, 59, and 60, where I talk about strategies to drive engagement, I talked about a talent review process where you would go through, let's say if you had 10 people that were direct reports, you would go through all 10 people and you would identify where they're strong, where they need to still grow, what's the next level to get in their position. And the value of that information in this context is you can use it to figure out what are the common topics that most of your team need help on. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story. One of the organizations I worked in several years ago, it was clear, and it was a client services organization. It was clear that we needed to make sure that our 200 people had a much better grasp of our industry, our financial services industry. And we wanted to put together some type of really easy to digest, longer term program where they could learn about the industry as part of their job, but just, maybe an hour or two a month of special topics. Now, that's an example of where we recognized that almost all our employees needed that type of investment. Now, we turned it into kind of a fun process because I had a contest to name the program with a prize. And I had an outside facilitator come in who was an industry expert. And, once a month, there was a lecture series. Now, in this day and age, we do a webinar. But back then, we were doing things face to face. And it was fantastic, very successful. In between classroom sessions, we had contests, quizzes, things like that with prizes. So we tried to keep people engaged over a period of time, learning more about the financial services industry. And there were other organizations in our company who were eager to take advantage of what we had put together. And it was actually very creative at the time, how we were doing it, what we were doing. Got a lot of engagement because our employees knew we were doing this especially for them and for their career. Okay, so it's just one quick story where when you look at the group overall, you may see a pattern, a trend, a repeated theme that really everyone can benefit from. So in that case, of course, you can put something together that everybody can benefit from. So if you didn't do the talent review process, I'd go back and listen to those episodes because that's extremely valuable for driving engagement. But let's assume you're starting from scratch and you know that this is something you want to do more of. Then you can have a group brainstorming session with your team. Maybe it's 15, 20 minutes, but let's say 30 minutes at the most. And in those 30 minutes, challenge you and your team with, say, flip chart paper, or if you're doing it through a webinar, you could do it with a drawing board, with just a document, to come up with as many ideas as possible. Say, if it's a 20-minute brainstorming, you want to come up with 40 ideas. If it's a 30-minute brainstorming, you want to come up with 60 ideas, but just have people share what type of learning they feel would be most valuable to them. Once you get this larger list of topics, things they've brainstormed, hold on to that list because then you can tackle that list in so many ways. Everything doesn't have to be a classroom. It doesn't have to be an event. It doesn't have to be a high ticket item. There can be lots of ways that you can work your way over time through the list of topics. And this is where you can get creative. So anyway, once the group comes up with this brainstorm list, take a vote. And maybe you have each person, you can say however many people are in the room, they vote. And there's lots of different ways to do this. You give them a little red sticky dot, they get 1 vote, or you give them 3 sticky dots, they get 3 votes. But you want to do some type of voting so you can see, if you did generate a very long list, you want to see what are those top 5 to 10 ideas. Those are the ones that you could put more attention to in the short term. Now, I'll give you an example of where I did this with a new team that I took over, and there were about 10 of us in the room. We spent some time doing some brainstorming, and it was clear that this group really wanted to understand. They were doing some very technical client work, and it was clear that they had some desire to learn more about some other pieces of the business that they weren't as familiar with, didn't spend as much time on. And one solution we came up with is every Friday morning for 1 hour, we had some business experts come in. And for a while, it was the same business expert, agreed to come in every Friday morning for a while. Maybe if it was, for a few months, then maybe we changed it to another business expert and really talk through specific aspects of the business, had a conversation, didn't try to use the fire hose of too much information in one sitting, but maybe brought in some reports, some data, some things that would be artifacts that the team could take away. And every Friday morning, there was this 1 hour over coffee, maybe donuts or muffins. And every Friday morning, they got to learn a bit more about the businesses that they were supporting. Now, the beauty of that is it costs nothing. I mean, maybe you're going to spring for some donuts and that's about it. But learning doesn't have to be some big production where it's thousands of dollars bringing in outside instructors. You might do that, but it doesn't have to go back to that solution. So get creative. So right now you've brainstormed with your team. You have this list of topics. Everybody's voted on what they think would be of most value. And maybe now you've got your top 5 to 10. Okay. Now, the next step, and you could do this in a separate session, doesn't have to be all in one sitting. Sometimes it's good to break it up. You might have a 1-hour meeting. The first half is doing the brainstorming. The second half is the prioritizing and discussion of those priorities. But the next step in the process, which could be another quick meeting, engage them in the process of going through those top 5 to 10 and determining what are some ideas of how you could create a learning opportunity. It could be that they will volunteer, get volunteers, right? Help you research what's available. What does the company already have on an online portal for self-paced training? Are there recommendations for books, courses, articles? Are there other people within your organization, even within your group, who could conduct those informal brown bag lunches? So it could be that there's somebody within your organization who has the expertise that you're looking for. They could come in and do a one-time brown bag lunch. It's at noontime. Everybody brings their lunch in. Maybe there's some show and tell. Maybe there's some materials, maybe not. But it's a great way to engage with your colleagues. Okay. Another idea is job shadowing. Now, I've had organizations where I've got teams of people who are bringing quite a few new people up to speed, that onboarding and training process. And so we'll do some job shadowing. So somebody follows you around, maybe for a few hours, maybe even a whole day, maybe even several days. And through the job shadowing, they're seeing and hearing and learning things that they don't know when they're back at their own desk doing their own work. So job shadowing is a fantastic learning opportunity, again, depending on your objectives. So the point of this is get creative. Learning opportunities don't have to all be in a classroom. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to encourage you on is when you have this list and you're working through it with your team, be deliberate about one topic at a time. Maybe every month you're doing something new. You go through this list, you've got, let's say, for example, if you had 10 different subjects, topics that you want to work through for the team, don't try to go through it too quickly or do too much at once, because you want people to absorb, to learn, and to make that learning stick. So don't try to fire hose it. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information about that in a minute. But you do want to space it out. And the other thing you want to do is every time you have a team meeting, make sure that you treat learning as a topic on your agenda that's just as important as the other work that they got done. That learning isn't something they're doing at night and on the weekends. Treat the learning activities as important as their assignments. So put it on the agenda. Make sure that you're shining a spotlight on it so that you can say, all right, geez, we're having a staff meeting. Okay, great. Let's acknowledge what we completed over the past week or past month for training, for learning. And let's talk about what's coming up, right? Talk about it intentionally and deliberately when you get together as a group. Because when you can be explicit and say, it's really important to me personally that we stick with this list and we really work through it. I want to make sure that each of you has the opportunity to learn and grow. And you explicitly say those words and you're genuine, right? You want to be authentic. That has a lot of weight on your team because they hear it, they see it, and you're walking the talk. You're actually doing it. If you don't explicitly ever mention it, ever talk about it, and just think that it's all going to happen magically in the background, you're doing yourself a disservice because, as I said at the start of this episode, 5 out of the 12 drivers of engagement all directly relate to learning. So let me remind you on what some of those are. And these are quotes. There is someone at work who encourages my development. At work, my opinion seems to count. That gets into them having a say in the learning piece. My fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. Again, that goes back to, as a group, you're talking about training. In the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. And this last year, I've had the opportunities at work to learn and grow. So those are all interrelated. So you can have a really big impact on engagement. I'm going to share another story with you. Some of my clients, when I'm working with them, now this could be a corporate client I'm doing consulting with, this could be a coaching client, but what I have seen is that there's a high motivation when employees understand that there's some type of allocation for training. Maybe it's, $500 a person, $2,500 a person. Some at the more senior leadership levels, it could be thousands of dollars per person. It really all depends on where you are in the organization, your organization's budget, and so on. But there can be an allocation. And the real power is when senior leadership actually looks at spending that money as a reflection on how committed the employee is on demonstrating their commitment to their own professional growth. That can be part of the decision. Who is high potential? Who's ready for promotion? Did they advance? Did they add to their skill set and get closer to what we need for that higher level position? So many organizations will look at individuals, and one of the criteria for getting ahead, getting the next promotion is that individual committed to their own growth? What have they done? Like if you haven't gone to training or done anything in a few years, and it's clear, it's obvious that you don't, that can actually be a strike against you. So this is for your professional development and for your team. So what you want to do is make sure, if you can, provide transparency to what's available. If there's an allocation, when I say allocation, sometimes people know exactly what their training budget is for the year on a per person basis. Sometimes it's a big mystery. Nobody knows. And they really have to go find out and ask their manager or talk to HR. So if it's possible, it's ideal to provide some transparency. If you have a training budget and it's for the whole team, there isn't such a thing in your organization as, every employee gets X amount of dollars to spend, then of course you can be more transparent about, I've got a budget for training, can only spend a certain amount. So we really want to stretch it and make sure it really counts, right? Make sure we're getting as much value as possible from the budget figure. And you can, share as much as you feel comfortable with. Now, the other thing you can do is track how many hours you are funding for your team. Now, what that can mean is they track their own hours. I'm not asking you to stand there with a clipboard and track the hours. But what I did when I had a large learning initiative in one of my organizations several years ago is I did track. And as part of their monthly reporting process, I had them come back to me, every leader. So let's say each leader had 20, 30, or 40 employees. I said, I want to know every month what you and your employees have done for training. We had a big corporate initiative on learning and making sure that every employee in the company spent at least 20 hours over the year doing some type of training. And so I had my leaders actually share that with me so I could track it and knew who was not spending any time on learning activities and who was. So clearly the people who were more ambitious, more committed to their growth, it was obvious the trend of who was and who wasn't. It wasn't so much that there was a penalty, but you want to know if somebody's really putting in the effort to do the training. And, oh, by the way, their performance on the job is also outstanding. Then that's an individual who you may see as high potential, right? They're doing both. Obviously, you don't want people sitting in training and not getting their work done. So I do suggest that where it's practical to do some type of tracking. Not, an administrative nightmare or anything like that, but if you can figure out a way to do it that's pretty straightforward, the value is at the end of every quarter, at the end of the year, that's something you can look back and say, look at what we have done for training. Here's the topics, the number of hours we've put in, and it's something that you can applaud, celebrate, and recognize, and point it out to the team, because on an itsy bitsy level of an hour here, a half hour there, at the end of the year, it actually could add up to something significant with several topics, lots of activities, and it will have more impact to say, you know what, let's celebrate how we've learned and grown this year. We've collectively put in 100 hours of training or whatever it is. So the more you can be explicit, the more your team is going to see that there's strong correlation between what you set out to do and what you actually accomplished. It's called the progress principle. People need to see progress. And the only way they're going to see it is if you talk about it, track it, report it, acknowledge it, and celebrate it, right? It has to be mentioned, right? If you talk about it once and then never again, you're not going to get that much credit for it. You got to follow through. Now, the other thing is I would take it a step further, and you don't have to make it required, but offer up to your direct reports for them to create their own development plan. And the development plan might simply be the 1, 2, or 3 areas that they want to grow. I say 3 because if a person tries to tackle too many skill areas in, say, a 6 to 12 month period, it might be a little overwhelming. Like, make some significant progress before you tackle area number 4, 5, or 6. So try and keep it to 1 or 3 so somebody really makes significant progress. Now, if you don't have a development plan template that you already use, feel free to go to my website, donnasirianni.com, go to the resources tab and download, you'll see it listed, development plan, and you can download it. It's basically an Excel spreadsheet, and the instructions are right within it. It's pretty self-explanatory, and it's real simple. But the beauty is, if you've got someone that works for you, you can say to them, hey, bring your development plan to our one-on-ones. I'd like to know how you're doing. Where are you making progress? What have you learned? How have you applied what you've learned? What impact is it having? These are fantastic questions for you to ask in one-on-ones. And again, it goes back to engagement. Then you're someone at work, right, their boss, who's talking to them about their progress. You've provided opportunities to learn and grow. You've encouraged their development. Okay, this is really powerful. Now, I've kind of gone through very quickly the steps that you can follow. But what I want to share with you is a strategy I'd like you to keep in mind as you approach training. I mentioned earlier, it's really helpful if you, every month, as part of your team meeting, team discussion, as you take baby steps forward. Don't try to do too much at once. Like, for example, if you thought, oh, we're really going to make a big splash and have a 3-day meeting, go off site, and it's for 3 full days of condensed material, and it's going to be really robust and comprehensive. That actually is not a good strategy if you want to make the learning stick. So according to the Neuro Leadership Institute, they have a model for how to make learning stick. And the model is, I'll just share a couple of the principles with you. First of all, you want to make sure that you do smaller chunks of time where people can actually focus and pay attention. This could be a 30-minute webinar. It could be a 1-hour meeting, but it's something that's a short, concise, very focused topic, very focused part of the training. Really clear message, clear topic. Then maybe a day later or a few days later, there's a group discussion. Maybe there's an assignment, something that you're going to work on. Maybe a week later, there's some follow-up. There's a bigger group discussion or another assignment. But you want to have attention. You want to have space between the learning activities. So don't try and squeeze it all into 3 days. You'd be better off having a webinar, and then a week later, a discussion, and then a week later, maybe some type of assignment. It doesn't have to be in that sequence, but by having some spacing between these short activities, it's actually going to reinforce the material so that the participants are more likely to retain the information. Now, when I talk about attention, focused attention, I've given hundreds of hours of workshops, and what I had learned from the Neuro Leadership Summit, that was back a couple years ago, is that anybody in the room, if they're on their phone or they're using their laptop, it actually diminishes the capability of everyone else in the room to concentrate and retain what they're learning. Even if, let's say you're in a classroom with 20 people and only one person is on their laptop, they're working on something else. They might even be taking notes, but they're working on their laptop. everybody in the room is going to scan and keep their eyes, they're going to keep going back to that one person on a laptop. It's human nature. It's the way the brain works. And neuroscience has shown that everyone in the room retains less information because of that incident. So if you are having these meetings where a business expert comes in, or it's a webinar or something like that, be sure to emphasize, for your colleagues, your teammates, no laptops, no cell phones, just pay strict attention for that short. Now, if you're making the learning shorter, it should be easier to say, hey guys, for this next 30 minutes, I want your full attention, put away your phone, no laptops, just for 30 minutes, we're just going to concentrate on this subject. That's a lot easier to do. You're not asking them to do without their phone for 3 days. Okay. So the other aspect is if you actually have some type of assignment or discussion where they're thinking about how this applies to them. There's a discussion and a takeaway, maybe an action item that they're going to take. Now, these are things that make good sense, right? And I'm sure if you think about events that you've gone to, you go to an event, a classroom, it's a training course, you're there for a day, maybe it's longer. And, really a month after that, how much of it did you really remember? And did you apply any of it? Maybe, maybe not. So these quick tips are to help you get more value from the learning activities that you orchestrate for your own organization. So some of it may sound like good intuition, but too often I myself even have been the delivery of the fire hose, and that just never works. It can energize people, but can also zap them, create stress because they've got a lot of work to do and it's piling up while they're sitting in a classroom for the day. So you're doing everybody a favor and making the learning stick when you design short, concise learning opportunities and space them out. So over a course of a month, you might say, for 1 hour every Friday morning, we're going to focus on this topic and we're going to go through the webinar together. The following week, we'll discuss it. The following week, there'll be a little assignment. So maybe in total, you spent a couple of hours on one topic, but you'll have a bigger impact. People actually remember when you take that approach than if you just blocked off a half a day. So these are just food for thought for you to try and get the most that you can. Now, I use these same techniques I mentioned at the start when I introduced myself as founder of Success Compass Academy. After doing workshops, hundreds of workshops on many, many topics for professional development and for leadership development, what makes me sad is that you do it once, you do the 2 to 3 hour workshops, and there's no follow-up. If you join that company, you join that organization a week later, sorry, you missed it. It was last week. So this is why e-learning can be so powerful. I also felt that it's a shame that employees don't have more real-time access, more immediate real-time access to when they need something. So I created Success Compass Academy. And I took all the knowledge and experience from the hundreds of workshops I've done, and I broke them into 3 programs. The goal is, now you don't have to, but the goal is you go through the programs, you start with program 1, go to program 2, and then program 3. And it's a combination of e-learning, short modules, video, audio, exercises, but I also have group calls to discuss the material and private coaching, where I'm going to talk to you privately about what's your reaction to the material, where are you stuck, how does this apply to you, what could you do next? So it's a multi-pronged approach. You get to learn and discuss the material with your colleagues, or maybe if you're in the group and you don't know the other participants, you're learning from each other, but I'm guiding you, and you can do the learning on your own, have the group discussion, and then speak with me privately. So this model really does mirror what I was sharing with you about the neuroscience behind, really making learning stick. So Success Compass Academy is a series of programs. I won't go into them in too much detail on this episode, but I take you everywhere from getting clarity on your strengths, your values, passions, your vision for your career, how to position yourself as a leader, all the way through expanding your performance, working with others, emotional intelligence. Anyway, it goes on. So I kind of think of it as we're climbing up the mountain. We're acclimating, getting the fundamentals, and then we're doing the climb. And then by program 3, you're that inspiring leader. So it's a progression. Anyway, don't want to go into too much detail on this. You could always check out my website, but I wanted to share it with you because I myself am trying to walk the talk of everything that I have learned, how I can make it more approachable for you. Now, some of the things, it's really helpful when you tap into the creativity of your peers and your employees. I'm going to give you another quick story. When I was back at the software company where I said I was chief people officer, one of our executives was a big fan of Toastmasters. And I wasn't really that familiar with the format, but she sponsored Toastmasters to come in. It was fantastic. Toastmasters came with a structure, the material, there was a consistent approach. We had probably about a good 40 of us that were at all the Toastmaster meetings. It was fantastic. People had a blast with it, and everybody who's there is, of course, practicing their speaking skills in front of an audience, and there's a lot of really fantastic structure to it. That is a learning opportunity. Very interactive. By us doing this together as an organization, we're also learning about each other, hearing each other's stories, and it was absolutely fantastic. Excellent learning opportunity. I give it an A+, and it was absolutely not sitting in a classroom, listening to somebody go through PowerPoint, and going away with homework. It was a much more dynamic learning opportunity, but still with an end result of everyone feeling more at ease, comfortable, articulate, and confident, standing up in front of a room full of people and giving a talk. So it's just another example. So hopefully you've gotten some good ideas from today's episode. Again, the whole point here is to expand learning opportunities for you and your team so that you can increase employee engagement, which is going to help you get the best results from everyone, hopefully retain your top talent, be a sought-after leader, and actually be seen as somebody who really knows how to manage talent to get the best results for the organization. So with that, I wish you the best, and I hope you have a great day.